Chelsea have just signed Tosin Adarabioyo from Fulham in a deal that could be one of the best bits of business in this summer transfer window, but there is plenty of speculation around more incomings. I'm Mono from Mono CFC, and these are 5 signings to propel Chelsea to Premier League glory. Number 1. Benjamin Sesko. Starting off with the big one of Chelsea's main transfer targets this window seems to be the Slovenian striker Benjamin Sesko. The RB Leipzig striker has been in fine form this last season just gone, and could be the answer to the striker problem Chelsea have been having in recent years. He's scored 18 goals and gotten 2 assists in 42 matches in all competitions this season, and though that doesn't sound overly impressive in that large amount of games, it's important to know that he's only played 2,000 minutes this season, with 20 of those 42 appearances being off of the bench. If we take a look at his stats in comparison to all other strikers in the top 5 leagues, it paints a clear picture of what Sesko is all about. His overall game isn't the greatest, but he is a pure goal scorer, being in the 96th percentile for non-penalty goals with 0.75 per 90. I do these types of videos a lot, but there's always people that are new to the channel, so just to explain what that means a little further, it means that Sesko is in the top 4% of all strikers in the top 5 leagues in terms of open play goal scoring, which is an amazing feat for a 21-year-old in his first season in the Bundesliga. It's also worth pointing out that his total shots per 90 is relatively low, with only 2.89. This means that he doesn't get a lot of shots off, but when he does, he more than likely scores. And if we delve into his shooting stats a little deeper, we can see that he averages 1.54 shots on target per 90, with 53.2% of his shots being on target. He is a very efficient, clinical striker, and that's something Chelsea have been missing for a long time. But will he fit into Enzo Maresca's system? Well, he's not particularly the profile that we are looking for, as he isn't the greatest on the ball, as the earlier stats suggested. However, I genuinely don't think it matters. Clinical goal scorers fit into any team, just look at how well Erling Haaland and Manchester City glued despite City being a possession-based side. With him being provided service from Reece James, Cole Palmer and co, the 6'4" Slovenian could get into the race for the Golden Boot and propel Chelsea to even greater heights. Number 2. Riccardo Calafiori. Moving from the front to the back, the next player on my list is young Italian defender Riccardo Calafiori. The left-sided centre-half has been one of the standouts in an exciting Bologna team under Thiago Motta, and is quickly becoming the subject of a lot of transfer talk. Juventus, Tottenham Hotspur and of course Chelsea have been reportedly eyeing the 22-year-old signature, with his current market value being around €30 million. But why is he so sought after? Well, if we take a look at his stats in comparison to all other centre-backs in the top 5 leagues, it becomes pretty obvious. It's green across the board for him, being in high percentiles for almost every stat you want from a defender. Fantastic interceptions, great on the ball whether that be dribbling or passing, and a surprisingly good return offensively too, with 1.76 shot creating actions per 90. In fact, Calafiori has 2 goals and 5 assists from centre-back this season. One thing you might have noticed is that he has a relatively low amount of tackles, which may seem worrying at face value, but if we look more closely into his stats, actually his tackles won is fairly high, being in the 84th percentile for that stat. Interestingly enough, his tackle success seems to improve as he gets further up the pitch, which would really suit Enzo Maresca's system, which defends mainly with a counter press high up the pitch. He's a very confident defender that loves to dive in for challenges, with his slide tackling being one of his greatest assets, and he rarely makes errors that lead to an opponent's shot. There's a reason he's being touted as the next Maldini, and it's not just the iconic haircut. One thing I've neglected to mention though is, just like Maldini, he can also play as a left back, which is why his offensive stats are so good, and why his ball carrying and passing are 2 of his best traits. At his former club FC Basel, he operated as a left back for the majority of the time and was absolutely excellent there. The reason I point this out is that this is the perfect profile for the left back / left centre back hybrid role that we need to have in this team under Maresca. He fits into the team like a glove. Admittedly, this transfer is a bit unlikely with Juventus sniffing around, as the Italian international would likely prefer a reunion with the aforementioned Thiago Motta, who the old lady have recently appointed as their new head coach. Nevertheless, this would be an exciting bit of business if we managed to pull it off, and could help Chelsea on their way to more trophies. Number 3. Crescencio Somerville. I've spoken about wingers in the past, but one that I've neglected to mention so far in these videos is Leeds United man Crescencio Somerville. The Dutchman has been flying, pardon the pun, for the West Yorkshire outfit this last season, with him being crowned the Players' Player of the Year for the Whites after a fantastic individual outing. The tricky winger has scored 19 goals and bagged 9 assists in 43 appearances in the Championship last season, meaning that he's pretty much got a goal contribution every other game, which is very impressive for a 20-year-old. Admittedly, this was in the Championship, which isn't the highest level of quality, but you can only beat what's in front of you, and more often than not, he did. But why should we go for him? Well, let's take a look at his stats in comparison to every winger and attacking midfielder from the top 5 leagues. Yeah, this is pretty nuts. He's in the upper echelons for almost every stat you want from a winger, being in the high 80s or even high 90s for non-penalty goals, total shots, shot creating actions, progressive carries, successful take-ons and touches in the opposing penalty area. As Pep Guardiola once said, this is a winger, a proper winger. And considering the type of profile we are after in that position, he's the paradigm for wide attackers. Enzo Maresca's sides love to utilise wingers that are good in 1v1 scenarios and try to force those opportunities as often as possible, with Somerville beating his man 2.52 times per 90 and almost never being tackled, dispossessed or miscontrolling the ball when he's attempting a dribble. He'd be the answer to the left wing question. With Sterling being past his prime and possibly leaving, Mudryk having bags of potential but being far too inconsistent, and Nkunku probably benefiting from playing more centrally, we need a man to step into that position, and for only £30 million I think he'd be an absolute steal. After Leeds failed to get promoted to the Premier League after losing to Southampton in the playoffs, the Surinamese may decide to take a step up in competition and join one of the best clubs in the league in their bid for the Premier League title. Number 4. Marcin Bulka. From future Blues to a former Blue now, Marcin Bulka was a player that we inexplicably let go on a free transfer back in the summer of 2019. The Polish international has been fantastic for UJC Nice in Ligue 1 ever since he left Paris Saint-Germain, and could be the subject of a shock return to Stamford Bridge this summer. Bulka played every minute of all 38 games in all competitions that Nice had last season, conceding only 35 goals and keeping 18 clean sheets in the process, the most number of clean sheets in the league. If we take a look at his stats in comparison to all other goalkeepers in the top 5 leagues, we can see that he wasn't just carried by his defenders in front of him either. He had an impressive 77.1% save percentage, putting him in the 90th percentile for that stat. As well as that, he saved 37.5% of penalties he faced, and was very good at stopping crosses too, claiming 8.5% of crosses put into the penalty area. That, combined with his very low goals against stat and impressive clean sheet percentage as we discussed earlier, makes for a very good shot stopper all round. But shot stopping isn't the only thing a modern goalkeeper needs to be able to do, and with most of the shots Bulka faced being ones he was expected to save, you'd hope there would be extra parts to his game too. Unfortunately, this doesn't appear to be the case, with his sweeper-keeper attributes being rather poor on first glance. He rarely makes defensive actions outside of his area, and the average distance of those actions are very short. Admittedly, Nice do like to keep a lot of possession, and thus these stats may be skewed because of that, with him rarely having the opportunity to do those actions. So what about his passing stats? We know that Enzo Maresca loves his goalkeepers to be comfortable on the ball, play it short, and even act as a centre-half at times with the ball at their feet. Well, if we take a look, we can see that Bulka fits this idea in some ways, but not in others. He does play the ball short, basically never taking launch passes over 40 yards, or goal kicks, with his average pass length being the lowest percentile possible. This is exactly what Maresca wants. We've heard from the man himself that he once told Mads Hermansen, Leicester City's goalkeeper, "In the second half, when we play with you, if you play long, you go out. Continue in the same way," threatening to substitute him if he started playing long passes after a mistake he made in the first half versus Birmingham. Bulka doesn't get many touches and thus doesn't attempt many passes though, which may be an issue if he's tasked with getting on the ball more under this new possession-based system of Enzo's, but there's no denying he's a brilliant shot stopper and would likely be an improvement over what we currently have if Enzo deems Sanchez, Petrovic or Kepa not good enough. Before we get to the final player, let's take a brief look at some honourable mentions. Michael Olise from Crystal Palace, who I've spoken about in previous videos, Alvaro Valles from Las Palmas, a very decent ball-playing goalkeeper that could suit our system, Lenny Yoro from Lille, an exciting 18-year-old centre-back who could be the latest French defender to head to the bridge, and finally Pedro Lima from Sport Recife, a 17-year-old right-back who is one of Brazil's most promising prospects. If you want me to go over any of these players in an upcoming video, then leave a like on this one to let me know. And finally, number 5. Julian Alvarez. A big shock that has been revealed in recent days is that the secret team that is in for Julian Alvarez's signature is indeed Chelsea Football Club, with the Argentine possibly looking for a new challenge and more starts in a different shade of blue. A close friend and ex-teammate of Enzo Fernandez, Alvarez would be able to fit into the group very swiftly, bringing a tally of 11 goals and 9 assists in the Premier League last season with him. Alvarez has played in a number of different positions this season just gone, but the majority of his appearances have been as a centre forward or a second striker, so I'm going to be talking about him in those terms despite occasionally performing as an attacking midfielder or winger. If we take a look at his stats in that regard, they are massively overinflated and don't particularly paint an accurate picture of what we can expect. In comparison, his stats as a forward seem a bit more reasonable, with him having a medium amount of goals in comparison to others in the top 5 leagues, but very good creative attributes. He's in high percentiles for total shots, assists, shot creating actions, passes attempted and completed, progressive passes and progressive carries. If we look at his passing more closely, it's quite astonishing, and though these may be inflated from his midfield stints, even if we look at them in comparison to other midfielders, his short passing stats are still incredibly good, which will be a valuable asset in a short passing, possession-based side like Enzo Maresca will try to make us into. Now, the reason it's important for me to make that distinction and to show those stats specifically is because in this Chelsea team he'll be acting as the centre forward, and these are the exact qualities that I believe will make him a success in this side under Maresca, as he likes his forwards to be able to drop deeper and supplement the midfield when needed, acting almost like a false 9 at times. Alvarez is perfect for this position, and we've seen back at River Plate in Argentina that he can be a rather deadly, clinical finisher too, scoring 39 goals and bagging 17 assists whilst playing as a striker for them. This solves 2 problems we have at Chelsea, and I'm sure he'd love the opportunity to link back up with his fellow countrymen and be the main man in a side once again, no longer in Erling Haaland's shadow. We'll have to wait and see whether any of these transfers do indeed go through, but if you can't wait until then, YouTube reckons you'll enjoy one of these 2 videos on screen in the meantime. Thank you guys so much for watching as ever, and remember, in the rain or in the dry, keep that blue flag flying high. Come on, you Blues.